Okay, so I'd like to welcome Mr. Tom Causeway.
Anin bojo kinamokamendish takash Hiawatha dunjaba atik dodum mishisagi kanishna now. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Tom Causeway. I'm from Hiawatha First Nations. Bear with me. I don't know. It's a hard act to follow Stacy and Dave. I've never done this before, so let's give it a shot. As you can see here, this is a picture of our band office from the lake, Rice Lake. And we've lived here since time immemorial. The Mississauga means those who live at the Great River mouth. So, can I have the next slide, please? So, there's our welcoming sign. It says we've been on the shores of this lake since 1600s. We have a population of about 600 or so people. I wish I could see this better. Let's do that. Okay, so originally it was the lake was known as Palmadusga Dayang, which is Lake of the Fiery Plains, and this is what we called it. Next slide, please. So as Dave was saying earlier about these pictures of community members from Hiawatha ricing, this is the actual traditional ricing that was done in our community prior to 1838. Well, and actually after that too, but the rice was so large that beds there that would take you weeks and weeks to go through this, and there was so much rice that you could harvest in a week about 500 pounds clean and processed for each family. So it was just phenomenal how much rice was there. They said there was like 10,000 acres of rice going to a rice lake. Rice Lake is like 27 miles long or so, so it's a fair bit of marsh. And so traditionally, as you can see here, we got some parging of the rice in the back on the right picture there, the far side. She's parging that rice. There's some sorting and winnowing down here in the bottom, and just give you an idea of the rice beds and how thick they were with the other two pictures. And Dave showed you the one picture earlier. And a lot of the advantage of having all this rice too was we had a lot of fish and wild waterfowl. There's great habitat for them. So, but in 1838, the Trent Severn started developing, and they put their first dam in Hastings, which started flooding. So it was one of the first catalysts to the decline of our rice, or our monomen as we call it. So the other factors that contributed to the decline also were Canadian geese, because they have a tendency to tear up everything, and also Asian carp, so invasive species also destroyed a lot of that too. So, but the first catalyst was that raising and lowering of the water because there was an inconsistency of that level of water flow for the rice to be steady. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so Hiawatha basically. We're part of a larger group of Mississaugas of Rice Lake, which included Mud Lake and Skoogog. Traditionally, traditional knowledge teaches us that, we've always been here, and we've been here since time immemorial, and that we had agreements with the Huron-Wendat for agriculture and others for hunting. And we had these wampums created, and we honored them. Can I have the next slide? Okay, so like I said, we're known as the traditional people of Lake Ontario on the North Shore, and we actually, our own demise is probably the fault that we helped the Europeans settle. I'm thinking that if we hadn't helped them when they first come over, they wouldn't have made it through the first winter, especially in the Peterborough area. So But as time began to carry on, the population started encroaching on us and pushing us further apart and invading our territory. So can I have the next slide? Okay, I'm just going to throw something in here. This is a shameless self-promotion. This is my family. This is a picture of my, this is my great-grandfather, right there. That's my great-great-grandfather, right? And that's his brother, and Sarah, and I believe the other one's Elizabeth Cow. And around the 1850s, our name was Cow. And then my great-grandfathers changed the name to Cowie, right? So there's no story about that. Oh, perfect. Okay, technology. Okay, so as I was saying, he changed it around, as he got older, he changed it around to Cowie. And it's quite, and I always wondered where we got that name from. And in our language, tick is cow in our dialect. So, and being because I'm from the reindeer clan, which is Atik Dodum, so I think that's where this name came from. So, but the story goes that my great-grandfather was coming to town with the family and everything, and they always used to say, coming into the village, and they say, look, here come the cows, right? And the women folk didn't like that, so he had to change it to Cowie, right? So I'm not sure, but that's what I was told. Next slide, please. Okay, so we talk about that history, and we talk about the and around the 1600s and that so area where we were having a little bit of peace with the Nottoway, or as you call them, the Haudenosaunee or the Mohawk, and then all of a sudden, with the fur trade and everything, there came there was an influx of trying to push in and take territory. British were given the Haudenosaunee guns to fight us and fight into that territory for the beaver trade. So we talk about our history talks about our chief George Potash at the time tells this story about the battle, and it was this big battle, was this big push because the Haudenosaunee were killing off people trying to move forward north across on the other side, on the north shore of Lake Ontario, and the Huron-Wendat sort of aligned themselves with us for protection. And at one point, we'd say Cemetery Point in Peterborough is where the Mississaugas were involved heavily and took a stand. And we pushed the Mohawks in a battle all the way down the Otonabee River, past Campbelltown, all the way down to the mouth of the Otonabee and Rice Lake, easterly across the north shore of Rice Lake, and that's where our village was, all the way over to Roach Point, which was in Serpent Mountains Park, and we traced them across over to the Trent River, and took the Trent River all the way down, and we fought them all the way down and pushed them down to the bay, and then from the bay we chased them all the way across Lake Ontario, and they stayed over on the New York side until the American Revolution, and then the British had to take their loyalists and had to bring them back, right? So and this is a well-documented battle that has been recorded, and it's been and it's kind of proud, but and every now and then they said that the Mississaugas would get in canoe across Lake Ontario to the other side of the lake, and lay a reminder on them that we were still in the North Shore, and then come back. So, and this is what we've been told. Can I have another slide, please? Okay, so as I said, and then after the Revolution, right, the signing of the treaties, nation to nation with England, we talk about that, the Royal Proclamation, and we talk about the Covenant Chain, right? So Over the course of the century, the Mississaugas, we participated in 18 treaties from 1764 to 1923. And the pressures of increased settlement started to force our people to move into closer knitted groups for protection because of encroachment, because we're spaced out wide, right? Because we're always taught that we live light on the land. So living on the land, we lived small units and we could travel and we moved with the seasons, right? So we'd go to the sugar shacks for maple syrup harvesting. The North Shore of Rice Lake, we would go there and set up for the winter, but before that we would harvest our wild rice, and then we'd go out and we'd hunt and trap. So during those different seasons. So this is the way we lived. So, and we were spread around. We had traditional hunting grounds all the way up to Lake Nipissing. So, the next slide, please. Okay, so this is very interesting because in 1820, Chief Potash, he had most of the community baptized by Nathan Beggs, who was a missionary, one of the first Methodist missionaries. And it's kind of funny because I think that's when that whole perspective of the equal partnership and stuff started to change, because it started to follow a lot more of that colonial that colonial thought process, and not having that equal partnership with your spouse and the women in that power and that leadership roles and all that stuff that the women were involved with. I think all that changed around that time as it started progressing. And we sort of wandered away from our traditional beliefs to these Methodist beliefs. But one of the things that we said around that time was that they wanted us to stay in one place. So we said, well, we'll stay in Hiawatha, but on the condition that you guys teach our children how to read and write English, and so they know that for the future, right? So we were seeing that if you can't beat them, join them type thing. So when that thing is in 1823, our first mission house was built in the Peterborough County, and that's where the church, and that became the first like school type education stuff like that. 1828, an area along the North Shore was officially designated under the name of the Reserve of the Mississaugas of Rice Lake, or the Mississaugas of the village of Mississaugas. But before that was just a village. And it consisted of 1,120 acres of land, a population of 130 adults and 90 children, which was really interesting because the way they divided it up, if you can go to the next slide, is, that's not here, but they divided it up in strips, and they were like equal strips apart. Within the center, there was a community center, like there was the store, the post office, and a few other things, a council hall, and each person had the same amount of land on the shoreline, and they went all the way back in the same distances. So it was really interesting how they set that up. Now this here, you're looking at a bridge and a causeway. So this bridge here was started around 1840, and then it took a while right here from Harwood, and it went all the way over to Hiawatha Village, the Indian village where we lived. So they started with the causeway, and they found that they couldn't fill it because it just kept sinking and stuff like this. So they went and moved after about 10 years of that into about 1850. They started looking, okay, let's start building a bridge. So they built this bridge, and this bridge was to take a train from Hardwood, which is on the south side of Rice Lake, all the way across into Hiawatha, and then follow the tracks out from Hiawatha towards Madoc. And from Hiawatha, you would get off there and take a stagecoach and go into Peterborough. So it was quite a fascinating feat and marvel of technology, but the weather played a lot of havoc on this and destroyed a lot of this bridge. So it sort of fell apart. Next slide, please. So, like I said, in 1829, the two houses that were built in a direct and equal distances, and all the way from the banks, the square buildings, all the way back. It was really interesting to see that they were making sure that everybody had that same amount and nobody had any more or less, right? So I always thought that was interesting. But so, like I was saying about the railroad track, the frost really did a number on it, right? And like I said, you could take Fisher Stagecoach to go to Peterborough, and you could take the train through to go to Madoc. And some say it was the frost, some say it was Mitsubishi, right? You know, who knows, right? Some say it was us, but I'm more inclined to think there's frost. And the funny thing is that there's still boys out there, right? And the crazy thing is, and I love it, we call them idiots. They get in boats and they get in their jet boats and they start hammering down that lake. The water level's low, boom! They hit a piece of that bridge. It's still there, right? So it's really great sometimes. Makes me, you know, like, I mean, I'm like, you know, that's a nice boat. That's more than my car, my house, my kids' education. I said, boy, I don't know what you do for a living. But, you know, so when I see that get hammered, I don't feel bad. Sorry. You know, so can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so this here picture, you've probably seen this picture before, and I'm sure a lot of people know who that is. That's Chief George Potash, and that's Chief John Crow. And you heard Dave mention John Crow again. But this was in 1860, and this was in Hiawatha, and they were waiting for royalty to arrive. You know, the Duke of Wales. Next slide, please. And these are some of the gifts, or the Prince of Wales, I mean, sorry. These are some of the gifts that were given. So during this time frame, a lot of our people, the men were a lot of guides, and they would do trapping, and they would do fishing and hunting guides. That's what they did for a living. The women, skilled. They had skills. They did all this stuff. This is all birch bark quill work. Like this is a briefcase right there. Like it's amazing. This one right over here, right? The first one. This is a briefcase that was presented. And these pieces is just a sample of a few of them. Like my wife has brought a book that has all the pieces that were given to a man when he came. But he was on a goodwill trip, and when he came, he was actually coming in to give us a new flag, right? Because we carried a flag, because all the way from the Civil War on, some Mississaugas have fought all the way through those wars, all the way up, and we carried this flag, and it was a black flag, I believe, or red, black or red, I can't remember, and it had a small, like, Union Jack type thing in the center, but he always carried this flag for fighting and fighting. So, can I have the next? So, like I said, all the women did all that beadwork, all that quill work on those pieces, and they donated them. And they're still in the Isle of Wight. And actually, there's, I think, a lady from our community, Laurie Beavis, who will be heading out there next week or so to see how we can repatriate these things back to our community. So, and they're still sitting in the museum there, and they're still on display, those pieces. So, 1860, Prince Albert Edward comes, who later known King Edward VII, and he gives us a new flag, and he gives us the moniker Hiawatha, right? I mean, this, and as the story goes, because everybody says, how does that Mississauga community have Hiawatha as a, we said don't go there, right? But so there's stories about that. They said that because Albert, he was a sickly child, and he really liked the story Longfellow wrote about Hiawatha, right? And that was his whole vision of what Indians were, right? His whole vision, and he romanticized it, I guess. And so when he come, he saw the village, he saw everything, and he decided that's what he wanted to call it, right? And so he said, we'll call you Hiawatha now. And everyone's like, yeah, okay. Before that, we were known as Nanabush, so it doesn't matter, right? So we're saying, okay, yeah, sure. Right? But now the story goes that him and George Causeway were good friends, right? And so, and they say that that's where Longfellow got that, like Longfellow and Causeway were friends, and that's where he got that, the idea for the story and created it. So I don't know if it was paying homage to Causeway or not, but Chief Causeway, or George Causeway, as you guys know too, he was part of our community too, as well. So, so when we go to 1860, we continue on. 1860 was the first. The mission house was located in the west end of the area, and we're right parallel beside our church, right? So our church is right there. So it would have been on this side. That's where it was built. Now, the two pictures I have here is this one here. I had to put up because this is the last schoolhouse that was built. My dad was one of the last people to go through it, grade 8 graduate. Hey, moved on. And but that was the house. Now, if you ever been to Hiawatha, you would have seen it. It's sort of run down. It was on the right side as you go into the stop sign, and you'll see the lake, and you'll see the gas station and the store. It's gone. It's gone. So the people that had it, they didn't want to maintain it. They didn't want anything, so it's gone. All that history is gone. It's disappeared. Now, the other thing, I don't know if you guys recognize that. Does anybody? To the back of it, but that's about 1954. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, now we're going to Serpent Mounds. Serpent Mounds is a burial mound site, and Boyle had discovered it, as Dave mentioned earlier, in 1895. I don't think he really discovered it. We knew it was there, right? But he stumbled upon it. So we used to go in there and we'd do stuff, the ceremonies and all this other stuff. But also, this is where we would come around for when we harvested the wild rice, because we'd move from our village, and we'd camp out in this area, and we would harvest. And as Dave said, Sugar Island is about 300 meters, I think, from the point of Serpent Mounds. So it's like they would be there and we would be here, and we'd all come in and we'd harvest in that area, and we'd spend 3 weeks there harvesting. And during that time we would harvest, all families would get together, everybody's closed down shop, and go hunting, like harvesting, like people would go hunting. So the families would get together, and we'd all have strips of areas pegged off for our families, and we would go down and we would start traditionally harvesting them. Like I said, it's a great feeling if you ever harvest rice. If you get ever a chance to do it, it's fantastic. You go out there, and it's very relaxing, very calming. You get that connection back to the earth and the water. But like I said, so we would harvest, and they would work together. We would clean it, we would parge it like you see in the first pictures, and dance it, right? So we always say, let's get the kids to dance it. Kids dance better. They have more energy, right? So they're breaking the husk when they're dancing. So that's what I always say, to get the kids to do it. And but when we're harvesting and processing it, they play games like get the kids to put seeds in mud balls and throw them out in the lake, reseed, right? So, but it was a whole community effort, this whole process, right? So, so this is a National Historic Site. So it's got the signs. One's on a boulder here, and it talks about the historical content. It's in 3 languages. Figure that, eh? It's in English, it's in French, and it's in Anishinaabe-Moan, our language. So that's on this. So these are pictures of the mounds. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so this is how they originally found it, when they stumbled upon it, right? There's no picture that was written there. So in 1895, they started excavations around there, and started to notice that I found all these different bodies. And there's a whole presentation that I could go on about Serpent Mounds alone, but we don't have enough time for that. But in 1933, the land around the mounds was purchased for conservation and protection. In 1955, mounds were taken from us and they converted it to a provincial park, and it was quite disgusting. You know, if you think about this, what they did was they opened the mounds, they put our people on display in those mounds. And so there was glass rooms, and they called them the bone rooms, and they would have people come through, and they would pay the government to come in and look at these rooms with all these bodies in there. And you know, it's quite a horrifying thought. It's like going down to the cemetery and digging them all up and putting glass over, opening them up and putting glass over, and saying, "Hey, look, there's you know," and it's just not. It was quite disgusting, but it was a long fight. But we managed to get that taken away. Kim's dad was instrumental in that too, and they closed them all up and finished with that. 1995, the management went to back to Hiawatha because around 95, I guess it was just around the era of Bob Ray being in government, and we were in the midst of working out, I think, tradition on our hunting and fishing rights and negotiations and some of that kind of stuff. And then along comes Harris, and guess what? His motto was, "We don't negotiate with Indians," right? I mean, it's quite obvious with Everwash, right, and that whole incident. So he says, "No, none of that's going to happen." So the PCs again, yay. They say, "No, we're not going to do that," because he come into power. So Hiawatha says, "You know what? That's fine." So Labor Day weekend, I think it was about 1995, they go in, and they start evict. So they evict everybody out of the park that's there on Labor Day weekend. So it's a full park. So you think about this. You got a full provincial park that's booked solid with campers. They weren't too happy when we come in on the Saturday and said, "Get out, all of you, even the people that work there." So we kick them all out, and then we send them a bill, right, for what they owe us property. And so in 2009, we closed it because of infrastructure. We started taking the management and running over it. So, and the infrastructure was failing. We were losing like about 3,000 gallons of water a day through the pipelines, because the province never put any money into fixing the park and maintaining it, so none of the equipment was maintained properly, and we didn't have the capacity to continue. We started to. We put in a water treatment plant there. That's about a class 1 that can do about 200 homes. So we have that in there now, right? So, but we've never really had the capacity to go further. But we're looking at plans now and different ways to do it. So, could I have the next slide, please? So I want to talk about the Potash family, right? Now, George Potash, war alongside the British in 1774-75, he fought in the Battle of Chrysler Farm, November 11, 1813, and during the Anglo-American War of 1812, he died in 1869 at the age of 104, and he was the last head chief of the Mississaugas. He fought in the Mackenzie Rebellion, Upper Canada, 1836-37, and he was a hereditary chief of Mississaugas Rice Lake, and he died in 93 at age 75. And then there's Chief Robert Potash, who participated in the Fenian Wars. So as you can see, there's quite a historical account of Mississaugas participating in wars. Right. So can I have the next slide, please? So now, Johnson Potash, as Dave said earlier, was a renowned sniper, and he was accredited with 88 kills, confirmed kills. So he was, and his younger brother George, who is on the gun over here, the Colt, he fought with them during the war in World War I. This is Johnson here, and I believe this first one here is Elmer. And Elmer is the only one in World War I that went over who was MIA. All the rest of ours that went over any of the conflicts came back alive. He was the only one that they never found. So we have a cenotaph that honors these people. So can I go to the next treaty? Okay, so 1818, Treaty 20 was signed at Smith's Creek in Port Hope, which was the township of Hope, which was outside Peterborough County and Victoria counties, and included small parts of Northumberland and half of Durham. So we gave a lot away here on this one. 1,951 acres on this treaty agreement in Treaty 20. And like Dave said, it celebrated 200 years. So I have the next slide. Okay, so this is Treaty 20. Okay, this is, originally this is what the boundaries that the government said we had, right, for Treaty 20. Now, technically, and we argued, no, this part here, up here too, was part of it. Well, since the settlement of the Williams Treaty, we've been said, yeah, the government said, yeah, that's it too, right? So, and that runs up to Rama, up in this top corner, right? So you're looking up, and this is the area that Dave was talking about with Balsam Lake and that area where the Scugog people lived. So it was quite an area for Treaty 20 that we had. Can I have the next slide again, please? Okay, so the pre-Confederate treaties east side of the Rouge River, not this side, but the other side. 1783, we had the Crawford Purchase for the Loyalists. And 1788 was the Gunshot Treaty, and that was never signed, and that was Clause 2 of the Williams Treaty. 1819, the Renew Purchase, which Dave talked about, Treaty 27. 1822 was the 27 and a quarter too. So, and 1856 was Quinte St. Lawrence, Waller, Islands of the Trent, 7, and Treaty 77. In 1856, the treaties 78. So these were treaties that were signed by the Mississaugas, but were mostly Aldervilles. But it was just to give the scope of how much treaty area the Mississaugas had on that north shore of Lake Ontario. Right? This is the whole point of this exercise. So the Williams Treaty, we had signatories here where Williams Treaty, signatories were Hiawatha, Alderville, Curve Lake, Mississaugas, Scugog Island, Chippewas of Georgina, Rama, and Chippewas of Balsam Lake. And when we get back to Georgina Island, my great-grandmother's family is from Snake Island and Simcoe, so I just put that plug in too. So when we talk about all these relations, where those intermarriages and everything, they're there. So can I have the next slide? Okay, so this is a picture of the Williams Treaty. And this is to tell you some of that territory that we still had, right? And we talk about that clause down here, which was a Gunshot Treaty, right down in this area, which and then you see all this area here were the other treaties of the Mississaugas, right? To go up this way and all the way down this way, all the way to Kingston, Gananoque, and then all the way over this way with credit. So it gives you a whole idea of the vast size of the territory that the Mississaugas had or still have, right? So can I have the next slide, please? So in the mid-60s, Mississauga Rice Lake became known as Hiawatha Indian Reserve, 36. In the 80s, the name was changed to Hiawatha First Nations. So I don't know why we just didn't keep it Mississauga Rice Lake, but that's another story. The islands of the Trent Waters Indian Reserve is 36A. And this reserve is about 15 kilometers north of Peterborough. And what it is a bunch of scattered islands that are in Pigeon Lake, Buckhorn Lake, Lower Buckhorn, Lovesick Lake, Stony Lake, and the largest concentration of islands in the Lower Buck and Lovesick. But they're all islands that are owned by Curve Lake, Hiawatha, and Scugog. And they're not inhabited, but sometimes there's people that hunt and fish and they'll spend their night there or stuff like that. We have a few of those islands in Rice Lake too that are ours with our community. And nobody's on them. They just go in, maybe to picnic or stuff like that. But it's really interesting because when it comes to duty consult, right, we've run into problems with some of the municipalities when they say, we don't have to consult you because we're not within a kilometer of your reserve. And we're like, well, let me see, where are you? I said, yeah, well, you know there's an island there that we own, eh? Oh, right, so then, you know, so now we're starting to take it a little more serious. You know, we have to go to a few OMB hearings, but we've made our points. So much to the points that in our communities, we have, in Treaty 20, we have a seat on the official plan for the Peterborough City, and we have a voice, and also the Technical Advisory Committee for the Peterborough County Development. So we're on their official plans and in their plans, so we have gotten to that point. So we're doing better, I think, for that kind of stuff. And we're all concerned about the production of our territory. Next slide, please. So this is our community in a nutshell. So there's that beautiful church that you can see from Days Road, from across the road, from the river lake. I mean, that was I think that's 1870. I think is that church was been there, and it's a church that's ours. It's not owned by anybody else. Nobody. It's not belonged to no religion. It doesn't own by anybody. It's owned by us. And it was a Methodist church at the beginning, and then it went to United in about 1925 to 29. So, and this, remember I showed you the picture, I said that's our community center? That's it right there, right? Now on the back of it, you'll see we have an admin office, maintenance, and we have a trailer park down there. That's a six-place apartment up here that we have, and this is our gas station restaurant, and it's right at the mouth, it's right at the shorelines. You can see the lake. And we get people come in from boat traffic to get gas and cigarettes. But have the next slide too, please. So the businesses that we have in Hiawatha, we have that band office, we have a youth center, which is new as a matter of fact. We have a gas station, we have fire EMS, church, you know, fitness center, Six Flags, rental unit. We have Surmounts Park, we have a trailer park, we have Public Works, and you know, and we also have some of the stuff. So we like to keep stuff like the ballpark, cemetery, basketball courts. We have very beautiful powwow grounds. We have a boat launch, we have beaches, park benches, and we have our monument too. And there's 35 names on our monument. Can you have the next slide, please? So this is our health center, right here. This here is our fire department. We have an agreement with the county, Keene Fire Department, and we work together on a lot of stuff, have fires and work with each in partnership. This here is our new youth center. The old one was a dilapidated old portable, right? So now the kids have this beautiful new building to go in, and they hang out and they do their youth programs, and they have a youth worker there, an ADAP worker, and they have a very safe place that they can call their own. And they were actually the ones who designed and put their input on what they wanted there. So this is all they're doing. So we just went with what they wanted. That's the back of the health center right here. See this area here? Well, we're expanding. We've run out of office space. And so we have to we're looking at an option of expanding. We're building onto the back of our health center. And it's going to come down from that way down towards this way. So it's going to house all of us together. So health, administration, and everybody else will all be in the same building. All right. So and it'll have they're expecting to have like a 350 person area, common area on one area, a gym and showers and stuff like that. There'll be access, and then from the main floor out, it's going to come out, and there'll be more offices and meeting rooms and stuff like that. And there'll be it's going to look quite nice when it gets done. It's moving along the project right now, so in the planning, architect phases and seeing. And this area there is right beside this here. This little section here is probably where the restaurant is, and that's where the lake is. So I'll give you an idea of where that is. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so like I said, we had a ballpark. It's right there. That's just in front of the powwow grounds. It's very nice. Doesn't get used much now because one of the rules that they've passed in our community is when you have ball tournaments, no booze, right? Because they're concerned about the drinking and driving and when they leave, right? So it doesn't get used as much as it used to. We have a cemetery up beside the power grounds. Isn't that great? And this down here, this is down actually behind the store and the gas station. There's a beach area and a little bit of a parkette, and there's that trailer park again. And we have a boat launch on the east side of Hiawatha. And if you look up here, these cabins, these are in Serpent Mounds. And we had like 5 echo cabins there that we used to rent out when they were open. But they're just sort of sitting there now. But we're working on some strategy plans on what we can do with Serpent Mounds and how we want to move ahead with it. Right, and still maintain the integrity of the mounds and all that other stuff, protection of it, because we want to proceed with that without destroying what we have there, and we want to ensure that it's going to be protected and not looted and all this other stuff. Right now, we close it to the public, certain mounds, but we open it for special occasions. You got to get chief council approval. But if they allow it, we'll open it. We've opened it for some things with the county and some different private things that we've done for the community. But so I guess that if we were to build something that was there, like a visitor center or any kind of stuff, or something doing with indigenous tourism, we'd have to put a lot of thought into how we're going to protect those burial mounds. We've always been to maintain the maintenance of them, and we've always looked after them and protected them. So that's one of the biggest questions, is how we keep that intact. So can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so this slide is the businesses that are in our community, right? We're a small community, so most of our people live off reserve and work off reserve. But there's Andonerac Technologies, Blue Water Pool Construction, Camp Cherokee, which is cottages, and they're right down by the area that you can rent from Brad Laux. He's got an area down there that he's got a whole bunch of cottages right beside the gas station and everything's on the lake. So there's opportunities to visit there. There's a picture framing business, Canadian Bushcrafts, Crafts and Things, a couple gift shops, right? Don LaFont's got an excavating construction company, and believe it or not, we have smoke shops. But you know what? We only have 3. 3, right? So, yeah, and they're outside our community, so they're on the road in. So they don't even. So we don't concerned about the traffic and our people and the kids getting hurt injured and everything. So we're pretty good in that thing. And we have Big Wild's Craft Supplies and Gifts, which has leather beads, etc. And Jody's Native Art, and then we have another contractor. And some of my slides are a little off, I guess. And there's Comfort Tree, there's PG Sugar Shack. That PG Sugar Shack is genuine Hiawatha maple syrup, right? Harvested, and they make it right there, right? And the Wolves runs another cigarette shop, and T&G Trading Post is a cigarette shop. So, but this is some business. So, can I have the next slide, here, please? So also, we have a very eclectic amount, sorted of artisans in our community, right? From painting to regalia making to beadwork to birch bark, everything. Sculpting. So there's quite a selection. So, and these are all community members, citizens of our community. And they're really talented. We have, now how talented they are, on our polls, when we go down, they're recognized We have these little flags that are on our poles of our hydro poles going into our community, and they have their name up there and everything, and they're all recognized by the community for their work that they do. It's really interesting. Come next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going for another shameless plug. Our powwow, long weekend in May, right? I mean, like, we set up the powwow season in our area, and you're in for a treat if you ever come for a long weekend powwow, because you don't know if it's going to rain, snow, or hail. And we do all at once, too. I remember one time we were doing a grand entry. I'm going to tell you this. There's an old Merritt in front of us, and he's got his pipe, and he's smoking that pipe, and the hail and the wind was coming down, and we're all doing it, and we're just like this, and that he was popping. It was like a train. We were just moving like that, right? Just to get through, right? Because it was awful. It was an awful day, but yeah, you're in for a treat. Good people, lots of good food, good vendors. It's a good time all around. And no matter what, like, I mean, I've been rained on, I've been snowed on, hailed on. I fell in the mud a couple of times. Yes, that's another story. It's a good thing I was wearing undergarments at that time. The breach didn't, but like I said, no matter what, the spirit's always good. It's always a good spirit. And like I said, if you ever get a chance, it's on the long weekend, and we're a rough camp, so everybody camps out in the ball diamond. So there's a couple plugs there, so if you get there early and you've got like a trailer or something like that, you can plug in, right? But for the most part, it is a very nice weekend. And these are members of our community and friends, mostly our community. Now, next slide, please. Okay, so, and Mississauga today, right? We're currently working the Mississaugas, each of the First Nation, to work in partnerships in one direction and one goal. So, we've been doing this for a few years, and we're still going at it. So, next slide. Now, this is our mission statement for our community. We are the Mississauga of Hiawatha First Nations, are vibrant, proud, independent, healthy people, balanced in the richness of our culture and our traditional way of life. And see this picture? This is what I see every morning. This is it. The sun coming up, this is what I see. And I look the other way and I see the sun going down. But when you see this, you can't help feel good. And and I sympathize for who doesn't live on the lake. And I really do. So, because not having that connection to the water, that's just wrong. That's just wrong. Because we should always have that connection to the water, and we should always have that connection to the land. So, next slide, please. Now, this is my favorite quote. This is George Causeway's quote. He says, as far as I'm able to learn, our nation has never been conquered. 1850. So, to me, that says volumes. We talk about, and we know that the Mohawks will never admit that we did defeat them, right? We know that. But this is George Causeway in the 1850s saying this, right? From the stuff that he's learned. So, that right there, like, my father always told me, he says, they're trying to make us farmers. We're not farmers. We never were farmers. We're warriors. And we've always been warriors, peacekeepers. He says, we'll never be farmers. And that's why I think I really admire that quote, right? So, I don't know how long I've taken, and I've just been rambling, but Jimmy Gledge for the presentation and allowing me to present. I said it's a hard act to follow behind Dave and Stacy. And I wish I had wrote a poem. And I didn't bring my harmonica, so I can't even sing. Damn. So you're just gonna have to look at this face and this smile. Thank you.
So Tom, on behalf of the organizers, I have a gift here for you.
Okay, good.
Awesome. Miigwech. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Miigwech.